Hello. This is the Anonymous Reality TV blogger. Hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Today I'm going to be reviewing Insecure Season 5, Episode 3. And this is a Lawrence-focused episode for those of you who are Lawrence Hive members. So the episode picks up where Episode 1 sort of left off, because I recall we had Episode 2 kind of do a time travel. So essentially, Episode 3 picks up where Issa is being dropped back off home in LA from her trip from San Francisco when she was there for her Stanford reunion and talking for a panel. And Lawrence, of course, picked her up from the airport and took her home. And then that's when Issa had this realization that, maybe this isn't it, that they should break up again, and that she just wasn't feeling it. And so then it shows kind of the aftermath of that, which is Lawrence basically going back to his place in LA, and all of his boxes and everything are packed up and ready to go for him to start his new job in San Francisco. So then the episode picks up with Lawrence, shows him, in San Francisco with this new job and how he's thriving, and how before he used to be the person, of course, in earlier seasons when he wasn't working, that he was the one trying to pitch to different tech companies and things his ideas, and he was getting shut down. And now he's the person at the seat of the table making the decisions on which companies or startups that he's going to take a chance on. So, and I believe it was like a startup clothing brand or something that he was going to decide to take upon, even though they were fairly green. And so he had pretty much it was kind of interesting, the synchronies, because if you'll remember in episode 2, Issa had also taken a chance on Kofi's startup clothing line. So I thought that was an interesting synchrony. And so then it often showed Lawrence going back to his apartment and how he's setting up his new place in San Francisco. And we really didn't get too much background on him and Condola. We do know that was obviously a factor in Issa breaking up with him in terms of her not being comfortable with the situation at hand. And so then we have Lawrence, he's out, dating and things in San Francisco. And so randomly out on this date with this woman, he gets a text message from Condola that's basically like, hey, the baby's delivered, come here if you want. And, Lawrence is like in the middle of a date, and the lady is looking at him, and he's like to the female, yeah, so I just kind of got this text that said my baby just was born. And it was just so random, because just the toxicity and the dysfunction of Condola and Lawrence. And it's like, you guys really are, going down this road, and you did not obviously plan to, ever bring kids into this situation, because even Lawrence told her that, he wasn't ready and all this and that, and, Condola was still going to do her. So anyways, Lawrence gets on the next plane out to LA to see the baby in the hospital. And so then, he gets to the hospital, tells them who he is, and then they direct him to Condola's hospital room and, tell him congratulations, he's got a healthy baby boy. And so he gets to the room and he sees, Condola, and then Kiki Palmer guest stars. She plays Condola's sister. And then Layla Rashan from Waiting to Exhale guest stars, and she plays Condola's mother. And all hell breaks loose because, Lawrence is all like excited and everything. And then, they're already telling him that they've named the kid without him, without his input. And, Lawrence keeps trying to hold the baby, and everybody's just like being all weird and awkward and this and that. So then he finally does get to hold the baby, and it's just awkward, like the whole thing. And so it's basically a situation where, Lawrence and Condola are trying to navigate this co-parenting thing and how it's best going to work. But the problem is, it doesn't look like they really talked throughout her pregnancy. And on the flip side, they really never discussed, what the schedule and things were going to be. So Lawrence basically tells her, like, hey, I want to be at this first appointment. And so she's like, okay, cool. And so they go to the first appointment, and, the doctor's revealing some things, like the baby's losing a lot of weight and this and that. And, Lawrence is all concerned. And, Condola keeps saying, she has it. And, Lawrence says, we need to get more on a schedule, and that I'm going to be flying in every weekend for my job and this and that. And, it's just very weird. It's very awkward. It is very uncomfortable. Lawrence is trying to make the best of it. He's trying to say goodbye to the baby in the car, like as Condola and the baby are leaving from the doctor's appointment, but you could just tell it's just a lot. So it just keeps showing Lawrence flying back and forth, essentially. And so there were a couple of times that he did cancel if he was busy with work, but then it also showed him in San Francisco setting up shop, basically like a crib, and, putting on some night lights and things that have like stars going across the ceiling. So I was under the impression that maybe he was thinking down the line he was going to take the baby for a weekend or something back to San Francisco, but I don't know. It was just very bizarre. And so then, they're going back and forth. So then Lawrence comes in again for the baptism because, he wants his family. His family's been asking him a bunch of questions. And, his issue with Condola is basically everything's being planned without him. And so, Lawrence, every time he comes into town, he'll stay with his friend Noah, which I miss Noah. Noah's so hilarious. And, he was making fun of the baby's name because the middle name was Mustafa, and he kept calling him Mufasa. And it was just funny. But they ended up having a baptism. And, Lawrence's parents were not happy with the baptism. They're like, oh no, they just did a couple of sprinkles. He needs to be down under and do an actual full baptism. We need to get that set up. And then it was funny because the uncle of Lawrence's was just making inappropriate comments. And it was just hilarious. And it was just very awkward. And so, Lawrence flies back again. And, he's then anticipating his next visit because it's supposed to be him, taking the baby overnight. So he flies back to LA, and, he goes to Condola's house, and, he's there, and, she's being weird, and the baby's crying, and, he's ready to take the baby. And then, like, last minute, she's like, you're not taking this baby. I don't trust you. And so they get into this, like, big argument, this big ordeal, and all hell breaks loose. And so, Lawrence ends up leaving and flies back to San Francisco. And on his flight back, he had like all this turbulence and all this other stuff, and like his life kind of flashing before his eyes because there was like another mother on the plane with her baby. And then it had Lawrence sitting next to an empty seat. So I wasn't sure if that was supposed to signify that he planned on taking the baby back to San Francisco for the weekend, or if he literally was just going to be taking the baby down the street with Noah to have for the weekend. So, and then the only other thing was, there was like a birthday party for Amanda Seales' character and her husband, and Kelly was basically putting it on because she's basically the godmother, and so her and the baby were so cute because they had on matching tuxedos. But it was just really a funny scene overall because her cousin was playing like this mascot, this pig mascot, except for he kept getting high and he just kept like breaking character in front of the kids. And then Kelly is giving like this weird speech how she doesn't like kids, but like Amanda Seales' character's child, and it was just awkward, but it was funny. And so, in advance, Condola had texted Lawrence if they could kind of show up together with the baby, and so they did. But then, per usual, it got awkward again because she, did not, her and him are just not on the same page. So he wanted to, take the baby because I guess it was time for like his feeding or whatever. And so he goes and takes the baby and then ends up getting him like some type of snacks and stuff. And so basically you can tell like he wasn't supposed to have these snacks because they're just kind of like on his face. And so Condola's like, what did you do? And so he's like, oh, there was just some treats on the thing and I just, fed some to him. And she's like, I haven't introduced him to any solid foods yet. And so Lawrence is like, but the doctor said, over 6 months, you can start to introduce him to things. And she's like, well, I decided to wait a little bit longer. And so he's like, you didn't tell me. So they're just going back and forth in front of all these people at this kid's birthday party. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then Amanda Seales' husband like pulls him to the side and he's like, hey, let's go move some boxes. And so they go outside of the party. And so Lawrence is like, okay, so where do we move these boxes? And so he's like, just kidding. There are no boxes to move, but you guys got to chill. And he's like, I know this is hard. We all go through it in terms of, parenting being a new experience and this and that. And it's a different experience, especially since the two of you aren't married and you guys aren't seeing each other on a regular basis. So therefore, your guys's schedules and everything is out of whack. And so, Lawrence just said he feels frustrated because he feels like he's not involved and he wants to be involved, but he feels like he keeps getting these little restrictions. And so, he was just kind of in his feelings with the whole thing. And so then it just has him like flying back and it just has him like when he's back in San Francisco, just like staring at this crib that he put together, staring at, the lights, the night light with the stars in the ceiling that he put together and just kind of like, reflecting. And so then it kind of shows after that, which I thought was pretty neat. It showed this split screen of what Condola does when she's in LA and what Lawrence does when he's in San Francisco. So it shows a typical day. If Lawrence is tired, getting home from work, he'll lay on the couch. It shows Condola's tired from dealing with the baby or putting the baby down for a nap, and then she lays down on the couch. And then it shows, Condola getting up if the baby, starts crying or something. And then it shows Lawrence getting up if he gets a call for work. And then it shows Condola on like a typical night, how she's like tending to the child. And then on a typical night, it shows Lawrence like out on a date and then having sex with somebody. It's like a little nightcap. And then it just kept showing, Condola doing different things, putting together, the bottles for the baby and all this stuff. And just how hard it is, how difficult it truly is as a single mom. And not only as a single mom, but when you are an older woman and you're a professional and you're a single mom, and you don't have that help. Like, yes, she has her mom and she has her sister, but we don't know the context of that if they were just visiting at the beginning for the simple fact that, it was a newborn baby and, now Condola's back on her own or, what the circumstances are involving that. But, it just really showed the dynamic in the situation. And it's pretty realistic when you're talking about single parents that, typically that is the case. The mom is doing so much. And, the father, even involved fathers, they still have some downtime to where they still can do them. They still can, date other women. They could still do X, Y, and Z. Whereas that's not the same type of freedom that the single mom has unless somebody, offers to babysit or offers to watch every once in a while for them to do something. So that was kind of the nature of the episode. I'm not sure. I didn't mind the episode in terms of it happening. I just felt from a continuity perspective, I was just trying to follow where we were going. Like, I felt that could have been something, if we were going to do a time jump, in episode 2, I felt we could have just led into this episode for episode 2, but also had some more nuances in terms of the other characters. I want to say I low-key kind of enjoyed it more when there's focuses on the other characters like Lawrence and Kelly, and Molly, of course. Like, I feel like their stories and their arcs are like super interesting. I feel like Issa in these awkward relationships or situationships she keeps subjecting herself to, it's starting to get uncomfortable. Like, for instance, next week for episode 3, we are seeing more of Nate for some reason. And it's like awkward because they have like this beach date and Issa brings her friends. And now we're getting more of Nate's friends for some reason. And I just don't understand where we're going with this. And I think one of Nate's friends wants to hook up with Molly. So it just looks like it's going to be a hotmess.com. And I just don't understand where they're trying to go with Nate. Like, it just seems very awkward because obviously, Issa's not ready for a relationship. Obviously, Issa has unresolved issues with the fact that Nate ghosted her, and his explanation, while it may have been legit, it may have not been legit, we don't know, but either way, it still basically has affected her to enough to where she has intimacy issues with him and moving forward with him. So I'm just trying to figure out what his purpose is this season. So, because it's like, I already know they're foreshadowing that there's going to be some sort of reconciliation with Lawrence or an attempt at a reconciliation down the line. And I just want to know like what we're doing. And I low-key miss Daniel. Like, if anything else, that was the one guy that, seemed to really vibe well with Issa because they like went to the same school together. They knew each other previously, and now they just were taken to the next level with their intimacy and things. And, he was doing his producing and everything else. And I really enjoyed them, or I thought they were going to do an arc where Issa and Kofi got together, but maybe that wasn't, meant for it to happen. But either way, I don't know necessarily where we're going this season, and how certain things are going to be tied up. And then I also wanted to make note that Kelly referenced again that she was, dead at the reunion. She was dead 9 months ago. So I don't know if that's foreshadowing that something potentially may happen to her, because it was just like random to mention to Lawrence. And Lawrence low-key was trying to ask how Issa and her friends were doing. And, Kelly, of course, kept it cute and was like, yeah, everybody's thriving and everybody's doing really well. So, so that's really all of my thoughts. I liked the episode for what it was. I'm just trying to, in the grand scheme of this final season, figure out like where we're going with the final season would be kind of my approach, and how, certain things are going to get tied up, and if there's going to be a follow-up on this Lawrence and Condola situation, because I wasn't sure what the point was, if eventually it was going to be like Lawrence wasn't the father or something happened. I wasn't sure what the ultimate premise was going to be at the conclusion of the episode. So maybe we'll get some continuity down that, at a later episode or what have you. Those are all of my thoughts. So please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys soon.